and welcome to Ask Why Mondays. This is Jahaida Lopez, founder of Autism Sprinter, and I have here an amazing organization that I found as a parent on Facebook. And I want to introduce you, Yossi Schwartz from Key Autism Services. Yossi, what's up? What's going on?
It's a pleasure to be on with you finally. We've been planning this for a while.
I know, we have. So, Yossi, I want you to share, obviously I want you to introduce yourself and tell us the role that you play at Key Autism Services. And tell us about Key Autism Services. Tell us more. Tell us, because I don't know if they know how good you guys are.
So, as you said, my name is Yossi Schwartz, and most people would go with the title of administrator. Mm-hmm. More specifically, I'm also called the Director of Client Services. But what essentially I do is I am the person on the ground bringing the families together with the therapists. So we have people that are out there hiring the therapists. Once the therapists are brought on board, I pair them with the families. I'm the one that does the intake with the families from the first phone call onward. The families, for the most part, deal with me. Mm-hmm. When there are issues that arise during therapy where they need help and guidance, I'm the one that coordinates between the families and the therapists. Mm-hmm. I'm the one that gets the information so that we can reach out to insurance and get them authorized for services. For the most part, as far as they're concerned, I'm the guy who makes sure that everything gets done. That's kind of who I am. When I say things get done, it's a reference to what Key Autism Services does. So what Key Autism Services does is, put simply, we provide in-home ABA therapy for children with autism. Now, if you are a parent of a child with autism in the greater Boston area, we would be one of the many practices that you might reach out to who provides in-home ABA therapy. Now, I want to start just by talking about ABA therapy and what it is and why it's something that you should be looking into. So ABA therapy stands for Applied Behavior Analysis, and it is currently the recognized treatment for autism as it pertains to insurance covering it. So the reason why insurance has to cover it is because now it is the clinically recognized treatment for autism. There are other treatments that people use, such as floor time and whatnot, but ABA therapy is definitely at the top of the list of recognized treatments. Now, what ABA therapy does is it gets to the root of behaviors, and it helps replace them with what we call pro-social behaviors. Now, people often ask me, does it apply to my child? ABA therapy is custom tailored to the child that is receiving it. So, in my time as an administrator of an ABA therapy company, I've seen programs, as intensive as, you've got 3-year-old children who need help with potty training. They need help with sensory issues. Their menus are limited. Their clothing bothers them. They have problems speaking. We've seen children go from, nonverbal to verbal. And, on the higher end of the spectrum, we've got children. I've got high school kids, who are in AP classes, clearly have not had an issue integrating, and what they're struggling with social skills and, that kind of stuff. And in situations like that, the programming will be tailored to them specifically. I've seen so many different iterations of how the therapy plays out, but essentially ABA therapy is definitely a great option to go with. So that's the first thing that I've covered. Now, the way the process works is very simple. So parents reach out to us and we go through a basic intake process, which involves, first of all, we collect basic documentation from them, which allows us to submit a request to insurance to do the assessment. That the diagnosis, the recommendation for ABA, all the stuff that insurance is going to want to know before they authorize an assessment. Then we go ahead and we actually send in the board certified behavior analyst. Now, the thing that sets us apart.
And how long does that process typically takes? If you, sorry to cut you off.
No, absolutely. That's the kind of question that I want you to jump in with, because that's one of the most common questions that people will ask. There's no way to put a hard timeline on it, but it's very simple. More often than not, and this is actually the subject of one of the videos that I did on our Facebook page, is it really very often comes down to the family, because I've had moms literally get through the process in one day, where they reach out to me in the morning. I send them an email. It's a carefully crafted email, tells them exactly what they need to send in. And if they're on point and they're on the ball, they literally get it sent in to us immediately. Our intake packet gets sent out to them automatically.
Nice.
They fill it out. It's done digitally. We do everything we can to make it as easy as possible. And we send it out to them digitally. They send it back. They could get intake done literally in a day. Now, we have an interesting policy. So a lot of these agencies, what they do is they kind of tell people, okay, look, we've got a 1-year waiting list or an 18-month waiting list. And, you know, they just kind of leave people hanging to some extent. And these people are sitting there wondering why they're not getting services.
Yeah.
We don't kind of have a waiting list in the traditional sense like that. So what we do is, the first thing that I do is I ask a parent for their zip code. That's usually one of the first questions I'm asking, because before we even start, I want to know if we have practitioners even close to you.
I love that. I love that because now.
Go ahead.
I love that. I love that because for you to say that you're searching their zip code, you're making sure that you're meeting the family where they're at. And that's important because we don't want our ABA therapists to drive, you know, an hour away or be so far away from us and not be able to make it to their appointments. So I absolutely love that. I really do. Just wanted to say that.
Absolutely. That's something that's very important to us. And that's one of the ways that we try to set ourselves apart in general, is making sure that our therapists are not traveling more than something like 20 minutes for, you know, a 3-hour session. That's one of the ideas. And it's something we do with the families to begin with, and we do it with our therapists later on.
Wow.
Excuse me.
Awesome.
Is we literally map the location of where they're coming from to the exact address of the child on Google Maps with live traffic, just to make sure that we know how long it's going to take to get there. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. In terms of the time frame, what essentially will happen is we'll search and see if we have a BCBA. If I've got a BCBA within a reasonable distance that has open slots, then I know right away that we can take care of this family. Because excuse me, because we know that finding a registered behavior technician or the day-to-day therapist is something we're going to have we're going to have a couple of weeks to work on between the scheduling of the assessment and and everything that goes with it. I know that I'm going to be able to accept that family. So the first thing I do is I ask for the zip code. They give me the zip code. I run it against all of my existing BCBAs. And if it's within a reasonable distance, I immediately tell them I know that I can give you services. So that's part of the conversation. Then once that's happened, then we talk about the intake. So they go ahead and they start doing the intake. The intake process itself, again, is very much dictated by the family. Like I said, let's say that family that got their paperwork in 1 day. From the time they went ahead and submitted that paperwork, we immediately assigned the BCBA. The BCBA went ahead and scheduled the assessment for the following Monday. So they reached out on, let's say, a Wednesday. The assessment was scheduled for the following Monday. We already have a therapist lined up for their day-to-day therapy. So they're going to live from the time that she reached out to us to the time that she got scheduled is going to be less than 10 days.
Wow. 10 days?
10
wow.
Days. Now that's an extreme case. And that's not even an extreme case. That's not even an extreme case. One of the things that I mentioned in one of my videos is, parents call me and they tell me how badly they need therapy. And I talk to them and say, look, we're going to be able to help you. All we need is such and such paperwork. And then we'll wait 4 to 6 weeks before they submit the paperwork. And it's kind of like, you need to get that paperwork in. So one of the things I mentioned in the video was be relentless. Get that paperwork submitted. Get your, and obviously if there are times when we've got therapists coming on at the same time as families, we'll have a choice who to assign the therapist to. The kind of family that submits their paperwork the same day, and the kind of person that the kind of person that's interactive with us like that, we know they realize how important the therapy is, and they realize how badly they need it, and they're going to work with us. So we're more likely to assign the therapist to them than the family that kind of lives through the paperwork process. And it takes them 4 weeks to do that. So,
and it's so funny. But you know what? I want to cut in because we have a parent who's watching, and Rachel Wren says 10 days, unheard of, impressive. We're both like, oh, are you serious? Because for me, that was not my case. That was definitely not my case. And so I just wanted to share with you what a parent just said, that's definitely unheard of.
That's absolutely fantastic. And I want to make it clear that doesn't have to be a crazy scenario. That's actually very reasonable. If it's, if it's centrally located, if you're in Boston, Revere, Lexington, Hyde Park, somewhat centrally located, there's a good chance we're going to be able to do that for you because we're constantly bringing on therapists in those areas.
Wow.
So that answers the timeline question. In terms of the day-to-day, basically what happens is we send in the BCBA. The BCBA does an assessment. Usually it's scheduled according to the convenience of the family. and the BCBA. So it can take anywhere between, 1 and 5 days for them to choose a date that works. She usually goes in, I should really say she or he, but most of the BCBAs are women. So I've kind of started saying she, but either he or she will,
women too.
Go ahead and schedule that. And some depending on how advanced the child is, will decide how many visits are going to be necessary. Very often it's done in 1 visit. Sometimes it's done in 2, and occasionally once in a while it's done in 3, because that means that the child has gotten through different levels of assessment and has the skills for the next level. But then once that's done, they submit the assessment to us with an hour's recommendation, which is how we structure our therapies based on the hours that are recommended by the BCBA.
So what does the assessment look like? Because I know that some people who might not have children on the spectrum or who are going through it, what does the assessment look like?
The assessment is pretty thorough. What basically will happen, you mean what will the paperwork look like, or what will it look like as the BCBA comes in?
Well, actually, both, a little bit of both, because I know that there's a difference, right? Because before, when you come in, initial paperwork, you have the assessments kind of see where the child is at. And then I know that after that, there's some assessments. So maybe let's start from, okay, go ahead.
The way the assessment will look is the BCBA will come in and spend some time. Like, for instance, I just spoke to one of my BCBAs today. What she likes to do is she likes to kind of unobtrusively observe the child as she talks to the parent. So what she'll do is she'll talk to the parent, get an idea of the child's skills, get an idea of where the child's at in terms of, where the challenges are faced and what things are where help is needed. And in the meantime, keep her eye on the kid, because she doesn't want to be in front of the kid the first time, because she feels that that's not an accurate representation. But that's a great way of seeing it. So it'll take anywhere between an hour and a half to 2.5 hours. And they'll spend their time, doing that assessment. She'll get an idea from the parents of what they're, not just clinically what the child is struggling with, but also what kind of progress do you want to make? What are you hoping to achieve with this therapy? Because the therapy is very much based around the parents as well. It's understanding the parents are facing challenges and the parents need help too. So that's kind of a good portion of it is going to be a long conversation between the parent and the BCBA. Then what the BCBA does is the BCBA puts together what's called a care plan. Now, the care plan starts with a basic description of what happened. I showed up to so-and-so's house, such and such as a child of such and such age, such and such, cognitive ability. This is what I observed. These are the behaviors that presented after speaking to the mom, such and such and such and such were the challenges that are faced. And then she'll go ahead and she'll outline the programs that she's planning on running to combat those specific behaviors. So if the behavior is potty training, it might be drills relating to each time that so-and-so needs the potty, he will indicate verbally or using a sign, depending if the child's verbal. And what happens is then that's the groundwork for the care plan. So when the first time the RBT goes into the home, they're going to be using that as their blueprint, right? And obviously, if you continue on, it's going to say this is the amount of hours that we're suggesting. And that's kind of how we work on scheduling the day-to-day ABA therapy. But what's going to happen now is the therapist is going to go in based on the schedule we've outlined. So the most common schedule is about 3 hours a day, Monday through Friday. We obviously work on weekends, and I'm going to talk to you about the weekend social groups that I mentioned to you earlier. But the idea is that they're going to go ahead and they're going to be using this guideline to prompt the child and to keep track of the prompts. And they're going to be keeping track of all the data. So ABA therapy is very data driven. It's not kind of like, psychotherapy. You could sit on a couch for a couple of years and wonder if you've made any progress. ABA therapy is all about, empirical data, measuring progress so that, new goals can be worked on and progress can be shown in a clinical and empirical way. So that's what the RBT is going to be doing. And we have complex digital programs to allow them to do it. And it can be presented in graphable data what kind of progress is being made. So at that point, the RBT is going to be there, once every single day or whatever the schedule is that we've worked out. And then the BCBA is going to be there, once a week or so at that point, in order to track progress, make sure that it's being, the programs are being implemented correctly, and ensuring that, the family's getting the support that they need. So that's just as it relates to the child. just about every one of my BCBAs also works parent training into their into programming, because at the end of the day, you need to empower the parent to participate in the therapy and to be a contributor, because you could either do therapy 3 hours a day or you could be doing therapy 24 hours a day with the help of the parents. So parent training is written to just about every single one of our programs. And what that means is that when the BCBA comes to supervise the RBT, there are a couple hours that are set aside, and insurance pays for these hours. So it's not like we've got to take away from the time spent with the kid in order to take care of the parents. The parents get their own time for parent training, so they can be brought up to speed about what's being done, and they can be trained in, properly implementing the care plan and, kind of keeping the therapy going even after the therapist leaves. And again, like I told you, one of the things we're working on putting together now in the greater Boston area is we're going to start doing weekend social groups. I haven't done an official announcement to anybody yet, but we are going to be hopefully.
So you heard it here first, everybody. You heard it here first.
Tentatively, we found a location at a local library. We found a large rec room, and that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing social groups. We're going to be starting probably with about 10 children who are already with us, just as a test. But then we're going to be opening it up to the public so the families can come in and just get a sense of what ABA therapy is. And it's a great tool both for children to be able to play with other children, for parents to be able to interact with other parents, both on a therapeutic level and from a support, angle, to be able to talk to other parents that are dealing with the same things that they're dealing with. We think could be a fantastic tool and a fantastic help to parents. So that's also something that we're very much looking forward to doing. And that's, again, like I said, that's kind of what we do. Other than that, really, it's really just that's the process. We're constantly hiring new therapists. We're constantly bringing new children on board. And, in doing so, we're able to help families get the therapy they need. If the first therapist doesn't work out, because we're constantly hiring people, we'll bring on another therapist. One thing I do want to talk about is, the things that we do to make sure that our therapists don't leave. So ABA therapy's got a ton of turnover. I'm sure you got a lot of parents that you know.
That's very true. That's very true.
We've been on a waiting list for a long time. And then before you know it, the therapist doesn't work out, and then they're back on the waiting list. So we don't let that happen. That does not happen with us. Hey, buddy.
That's Pete. That's Pete, our cat. He wants to play. Say hi, Pete.
Sit there. So the things that we'll do to make sure that doesn't happen is, and I tell this to parents a lot, is that we're very careful about mapping. We're very careful about making sure that it makes sense for the family schedule. It makes sense for the therapist schedule. It makes sense for the therapist in terms of travel. It makes sense that this is what the child needs and that the family is able to cope with it, because we don't want to be in a position where, like I said, where the therapist is picking up and leaving after a short while. So that's something that we're very, very careful about.
Nice.
What else to say? Are there any specific questions that you would ask me?
So, no, I know that we talked about the social skills group. Are those, and you say that you're starting with the first 10 people with a group of 10, and then doing a test run and kind of see how that goes. And then eventually you're going to open it up to people that you're servicing in Key Autism Services, right?
Yeah. So the social groups that we're going to be opening, the way that they're going to be structured is as follows. So there's going to be a BCBA there just to talk to the parents. So the idea is on one end, have the BCBA who's going to be sitting with, let's say, anywhere between 5 and 10 parents, and the parents are going to be able to talk to each other, and they're going to be able to share their experiences, and they'll be able to kind of lean on each other, because again, nobody knows what the autism parent is going through more than the autism parent. So this will allow again, interaction. Obviously, it's going to be moderated by the BCBA, who brings this clinical experience and expertise to the conversation. And then meanwhile, on the other end of the room, the 10 kids are going to be kind of having a free play, interaction with, we're going to be bringing some stimulants and some reinforcers, that kind of stuff. And there's going to be therapists there with the 10 kids. We're aiming for a ratio of about 5 to 1 of therapists to children. And, we might do some nice things, as it starts picking up steam. I can see us getting a cotton candy machine, that kind of thing, just to make it Make
it fun. Make it fun. It doesn't always have to be so therapeutic, Make it fun.
Exactly. Sometimes it's tough that way. So we're absolutely planning on doing that. We're very, very excited to be able to take a step out of the just the cold grind of day-to-day therapy, and allow them to have fun. Like you said, if it goes the way I expect it to go and the demand is what I expect it to be, I wouldn't be shocked if we find ourselves, with bouncy castles occasionally and that kind of stuff.
I love that.
Because 100%, because I know that the kids need it, and I know the parents need to be able to get out of the house with the kid to a place where they're not constantly worrying about, who's watching them and who's judging them and that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And there's no better place than in an environment with other parents that are dealing with the same kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Everybody sees those memes about oh, you're an expert on how. One does not simply get a babysitter for an autistic.
Those are my favorite ones too.
And you must be an expert on autism because you once read an article.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Exactly.
So I know Rachel has a question. She says, how does Key Services deal with requests to see clients in a community environment? For example, taking the child to a playground or grocery store.
So that is absolutely okay. In fact, at times it's worked into the therapy. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. Mm-hmm. But in terms of leaving the house, the only thing that's an issue is the having an adult supervising. So we can't have our therapist one-on-one with a child for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. So there does supervising. So when it comes to playgrounds, especially when the weather gets nicer, it's going to be perfectly okay if there's a playground down the street or across the street or down the block. If the parent wants to take the child there and have the therapy be done there, that's absolutely fine. Mm-hmm. In terms of the neighborhood, we've had programming written in. For instance, I had a parent that came to us, and what they were looking for was they wanted their kid to be able to walk out of the house, walk down the block, walk into a Walmart, buy a gallon of milk, and come home. Now, as a parent, someone who knows, what it's like having an autistic child, parents might know just how many skills go into that, being able to approach a stranger, being able to cross the street, being able to, work with money, that kind of stuff. There was literally programming around that, those needs. So yeah, we'll absolutely figure out a way to make that work. And as long as there's willing to work with us, we're going to figure out a way to make it work for them. That's really what I would say.
I like that a lot because I know that, the weather is breaking, and it's good to kind of, eventually, our children have to be exposed to their community. And most importantly, for a parent's perspective, is more, it creates that acceptance, so that the community knows that they are members in their community, neighbors, school children that your children are going to school with, that there is the autism in our community, and how do we support that? And I love that. And Rachel said, that's great. I agree, Rachel. I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome. I've done a few therapies.
We have 100%. So I'm not sure what else I would talk about. I mean, one thing that I would mention is parent interaction and parent, working with the agency. It's like, very often we'll finally get these parents, we'll get them up and running. And then like these little things with scheduling will start to, tip the balance against the child being able to get staffed. Mm-hmm. As long as the parents are willing to work with us, to make it work for the therapist that we've assigned, we will bend over backwards to make it work. You know what I mean? We've got children.
Exactly.
And again, like I said, and we could do amazing things. I've seen some really, really, really fantastic results from the consistent ABA, really, really amazing things that we're able to do.
So, I mean, I think you did an amazing, for a parent, to end this, what would be your advice to a parent who is freshly diagnosed with autism, with a child who's on the spectrum? What do you encourage, and what, as a service provider, I know that you've touched on this.
That's a great question.
What do you want from us? What do you want as parents, so that we can make sure that we're working
You're best suited to getting therapy? Is you want to educate yourself. You want to be aware of what's out there. Know what you need. Probably 50% of the conversations I have with parents that call me is, I first have to explain to them what ABA therapy is, which is fine. I'm not saying that's a problem, because it is somewhat, it is not as, long-standing as speech therapy, for instance.
Exactly.
But more in terms of being aware of the challenges out there. Understand that, we're here working with you. A lot of agencies are going to put you on a 2-year waiting list. So when we're here working with you, work with us in response. Be as amenable as possible, be as easy to work with, because, as it is, just the logistical struggles of getting someone therapy on a consistent basis is enough of a challenge that, the parent presenting new challenges that don't necessarily have to be there can be an issue. And obviously, I'm not saying that a parent has to look out for their child and they have to know what their needs. But again, I like having dealt with hundreds of children and tell you that I've come across some very interesting situations where parents don't realize that they're getting in the way of their child getting the therapy they need. So again, what I would really say is just be as easy to work with as possible, because we're going to do our best to work with you. That's really what I would say.
I think that's great. It's keeping it real. It's keeping it very real, because often
on as many waiting lists as possible, be as relentless as possible in submitting your paperwork as quickly as possible, because the longer you wait, you have no idea. For all you know, I brought you on board with the BCBA staff to you, but then 4 weeks later, you still haven't submitted out paperwork. I'm going to have to give that to someone else. There's another parent who wants services, who really needs that, and I can only hold on to it for you for so long.
Exactly.
And I'll speak to parents who seem very excited, and I don't just kind of forget about them. We bring kids on in very small groups. So like when we run a Facebook campaign, we won't bring on more than 10 or 15 kids at once. And of those 15 kids, 7 of them are going to end up getting therapy because they're actually going to follow through the process.
Exactly. So, and I love it, because I'm all about smaller numbers, more intimate, and I feel like it gives more results. And I love that.
Absolutely. It allows us to hire quality therapists. We don't, we're not in a position where we have to hire just anybody. We hire the people we really want to hire. We hire the people whose schedules make sense. We hire the people who are, committed to ABA therapy. I'd like to just give you an idea of another example of something that we do to get the best therapists that we can. The best therapist you're going to find is that one that's that master's program student who's on their way to becoming a BCBA. They've chosen ABA therapy as their line of work. They're committed to learning as much about ABA therapy as possible and making it their way of, it's their career. And one of the things that they need during their schooling is what's called practicum or supervision hours.
Yeah.
So what we do is we actually cover the cost of giving them supervision so that they'll work with us. Because for us, it's worth it to know, we'll be paying a little bit of money out of pocket in order to sponsor their supervision. But in exchange, we know we're getting a great therapist for a consistent period of time, because they're not interested in switching agencies. So once they start getting those hours from us, they want to stick with us. So I'm able to tell the kid, hey, I've got you a therapist who's literally almost as qualified as a BCBA for 1.5 to 2 years as they finish these hours. That's just another example of the things we do to make sure that we get the best therapists we can get.
I love that. And you guys are doing, it sounds like you guys are doing an amazing job in meeting the families where they're at. Because this is awesome. I love this.
I don't know that anything else that I would bring up. I mean, if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them.
No, I think you hit the nail right on the hammer. I mean, I think that you've been very direct. You've been very real about information that many parents like myself did not know. And so I think this is awesome. And, Autism Sprinter definitely will vouch for Key Autism Services, and we will definitely recommend you to as many of our families as possible. And
that's fantastic. And we really appreciate the support. And we're always available, even if someone's not necessarily sure if they want therapy, they're not sure if they need therapy, if they need direction and help in possibly getting a diagnosis. We partnered with a couple of practices so we can help you in that direction as well. Need help with that, we're happy to help with that as well.
That's awesome. All right, so this is it. I'm excited about this. Let's share this video. All right, guys. Absolutely. So this is the end of Ask Brian Mondays. Go ahead.
I should finish off by saying that it was really a pleasure, and that if anybody wants more information just on ABA therapy, they can check us out at keyautismservices.com, and they can call us directly at 857-829-4040.
Oh, and I'm going to type this up, services.com.
That in a link. Yeah. And we get back to people almost immediately. That's another thing. We don't have, we literally, if you reach out to us by email, or you reach out to us by phone, or you reach out to us by Facebook, you're not going to go more than 24 hours unless it's on a weekend. And even then we usually get right back right away. you're not going to go more than 24 hours from us. We're going to reach out to you immediately.
All right, cool. Everybody, you see it on the screen, www.keyautismservices.com. So we'll be looking forward to seeing you again. Have a good day.
Be well.
Bye.
Bye.